Let me address my first question to Mr. Diamond. J.P. Morgan has committed to releasing a report on its racial equity audit by the end of this year, and I think that's a critical audit. I want to focus on two aspects of your racial equity audit. J.P. Morgan has noted on its website that workforce will be included in the audit, but it simply states, and I quote, "Build a more equitable and representative workforce and hold executives accountable," unquote. Can you please explain what that entails? Where does is J.P. Morgan conducting this particular piece of the audit, and what your plans are to ensure that people of color hired at entry-level positions will be supported in achieving higher-ranking positions and able to move up the ladder?
Yeah, well, I'm extremely proud of our efforts in diversity, and I think the racial equity, the $30 billion commitment, that's what's being audited. That's $8 billion of mortgages for minorities, $12 billion of affordable housing, $500 million of small business, a lot of education, 25% of our new branches are in LMI. That's what the audit is for. There are other diversity efforts like hiring, training, recruiting, which are not part of the audit, which we do report on. So you will get to see our progress in that.
So also, will the audit examine J.P. Morgan's partnerships with diverse-owned asset managers and firms to build stronger portfolios? And do you have any specific goals or accountability measures currently in place?
There are, in the racial equity, the $30 billion, there are vendor efforts that are in that. There are also vendor efforts outside of that. One's being audited, one isn't, and we'd be happy to report on that too.
Look forward to having both of those reports.
Thank you.
One of the things that's extremely important to me, I wouldn't be here today, the greatest investment that takes place by the average American, but especially the largest for African Americans, is home ownership, which I believe is extremely important. Mr. Scharf, I'll just ask you this question. It has been reported that Wells Fargo, along with other banks, is looking to reduce its mortgage lending business, including in areas like FHA lending. Can you please explain the factors that Wells Fargo considered in making this decision to shrink its mortgage lending business, and how do you believe it will impact communities of color and vulnerable communities who are already struggling to access affordable mortgage programs?
Thank you, Congressman. I think it's important to, first of all, we are committed to the home lending business, and we're deeply committed to doing our part to increase black homeownership through our home lending business. But it's important to note that the mortgage market has changed dramatically. And if you were to turn the clock back probably 10 or 15 years, you would find most of the banks up here as the largest mortgage lenders in the country. That's not even close to true today. I believe we were the #1 mortgage lender in the country. We're now #6. And it's not because we have purposely de-emphasized the business. Regulations are inconsistent between banks and non-banks, and cost structures are different. And the non-banks have taken an increasingly larger share of the market as we've continued to try to focus on providing home lending products, both for our customers but in the communities that we serve. To the extent that our mortgage business does get smaller from here, I can assure you we're going to do everything that we can to ensure that we're continuing to lend to those most in need, whether they are within communities of color or those which are more racial and ethnically diverse. That's something that we're going to track, and we're very, very aware of.
So let me just emphasize how important, because I focused on closing the wealth gap. And the way you close the wealth gap, starting out, is home ownership. You know, in our area, we talk about how most markets across, owning a home is an appreciating asset. So you buy the car, you buy the house and rent the car, because one is an appreciating asset and the other is a depreciating asset. And so making sure that that opportunity continues in our communities is extremely important. And to hear that the banks are shrinking that is concerning to me. And then that opens up to where else you can get a mortgage on an equitable basis. I'm almost out of time, but Mr. Monahan, you know, I was concerned about climate change and the reporting of Scope 1 and Scope 2 emissions, and where material, I think that your comment letter said that you would support Scope 1, Scope 2, and where material Scope 3. And I'm out of time, so I'm not going to get a chance to get an answer to it, but I would like to get an answer to you back. Can you please explain what Bank of America's position is with respect to materiality of Scope 3 emissions and what the relevant safe harbors should include? Just do that in writing. I'd appreciate to see that.
The gentleman's time has expired.